Shocking update. If you're watching this right now, you need to understand something critical. While the White House is celebrating what they call an economic boom, 44% of Americans are telling pollsters they're financially worse off than they were just 1 year ago. Think about that for a second. Nearly half the country is struggling more today than they were 12 months ago, and yet we're being told the economy is booming. Something doesn't add up here, and you deserve to know the truth. Welcome to US Economy Today. What I'm about to share with you isn't just another economic update. This is about the growing divide between what you're experiencing in your daily life and what officials in Washington are telling you about the state of the economy. This disconnect isn't just frustrating, it's dangerous. Because when people can't trust the economic narrative they're being fed, when their lived reality contradicts the official story, that's when real problems begin. Let me paint you a picture of where we are right now. President Trump, 1 year into his second term, stood in front of cameras and declared that America is booming. He used words like incredible growth, super high economic numbers, and suggested that maybe his public relations team just isn't getting the message across effectively. But here's what the polling actually shows. A new CBS News survey reveals that only 18% of Americans feel better off financially under the current policies. 18%. That means for every one person who feels they're doing better, more than 2 people feel they're doing worse. You need to hear this because this isn't about politics. This is about your wallet. This is about your ability to put food on the table, to pay your rent or mortgage, to afford healthcare, to maybe think about buying a car or taking a vacation. These are the things that matter to real people, and the data is screaming that something is seriously wrong. Now let's talk about how we got here, because understanding the background is crucial to understanding why you're feeling the squeeze right now. Over the past year, the Trump administration has implemented what they call a restructuring of the global trading system. What does that actually mean for you? It means tariffs, lots of them. The idea was simple on paper: make foreign goods more expensive through tariffs, and American manufacturing will come roaring back. Jobs would return to American soil. Factories would reopen in the heartland. It sounds good, doesn't it? Bring the jobs home. But here's what nobody told you about the real cost of this policy. Those tariffs, they don't just magically make foreign companies pay more. They get passed directly to you, the consumer, every single time. When washing machines face a tariff, the price of washing machines goes up. When steel faces a tariff, the price of cars goes up. When agricultural products face retaliatory tariffs from other countries, the price of food goes up. This is basic economics, and yet somehow the message got lost between the policy announcement and your grocery bill. And let me be crystal clear about the scale of this problem, because it's not just 1 or 2 items getting more expensive. We're talking about systematic price increases across virtually every sector of the economy. Business analysts are now reporting something they're calling a K-shaped economy. What does that mean? It means the economy is splitting into 2 completely different realities. If you're at the top of that K, if you're wealthy, if you own stocks, if you have investments, you might actually be doing pretty well right now. Corporate earnings are still coming in strong. Wall Street is still making money. But if you're on the bottom part of that K, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're trying to save for a down payment on a house, if you're looking for a new job, you're experiencing something completely different. You're experiencing what economists politely call elevated prices, and what you probably call not being able to afford anything anymore. The human impact of this is staggering, and this is where it gets personal. Let me tell you what's really happening to ordinary Americans right now. The unemployment rate is still below 5%. That sounds good, right? But here's the catch that nobody's talking about. We're in what experts are calling a no-hire, no-fire labor market. Companies aren't laying people off in massive numbers, but they're also not hiring. So if you currently have a job, you're probably okay for now. But if you're unemployed and looking for work, finding a new job has become increasingly difficult. You're sending out resume after resume, going to interview after interview, and getting nowhere. The opportunities just aren't there like they used to be. And it's not just about jobs. Let's talk about affordability, because this is what people tell pollsters matters most to them. Housing prices remain at near record highs in most markets. If you're a young person trying to buy your first home, good luck. You're competing against investors, against people who already own property, against an entire system that seems designed to keep you renting forever. Car prices, still elevated from the pandemic years, and with tariffs on imported parts and materials, they're not coming down anytime soon. Even used cars are pricing people out of the market. Groceries are another massive pain point. Yes, some prices have come down slightly from their peaks, but they're still well above where they were 2 or 3 years ago. You're probably spending 20 to 30% more on your weekly grocery bill than you were before the pandemic, and your wages haven't kept pace. This is the lived reality for millions of Americans, and when the president says the economy is booming, they look at their bank account and wonder what country he's talking about. Now let me break down the technical explanation of what's happening here, because you need to understand the mechanisms at play. Inflation is the big word everyone keeps throwing around, but let's get specific. The Federal Reserve has been trying to bring inflation down to their target rate of about 2% annually. They've been raising interest rates, making borrowing more expensive, trying to cool down the economy. And to some extent, it's worked. Inflation has come down from its peak of over 9%. But here's the problem. It's stuck. It's hovering around 3 to 4%, which means prices are still rising, just not as fast as before. But even if inflation dropped to 0 tomorrow, that wouldn't make things affordable again. Because inflation measures the rate of price increases, not the actual price level. Even with zero inflation, all those price increases from the past few years are still there. Your rent didn't go back down. Your grocery bill didn't go back down. Your car payment didn't go back down. Those higher prices are now the new normal, and unless wages catch up, which they haven't for most people, you're permanently worse off. The tariff situation adds another layer of complexity. When the administration imposed tariffs on imports, the stated goal was to protect American industries and bring manufacturing jobs back. And yes, some manufacturing has returned to the United States. That's a fact. But at what cost? The tariffs have introduced what economists call political risk into private markets. What does that mean for you? It means businesses can't plan. They don't know if tariffs will go up, go down, or stay the same. They don't know which products will be targeted next. This uncertainty makes them hesitant to invest, hesitant to hire, hesitant to expand. And that uncertainty trickles down to every level of the economy. Meanwhile, other countries have responded with their own tariffs on American goods. American farmers are struggling to sell their crops abroad. American manufacturers are finding their products less competitive in foreign markets. It's a trade war, and in trade wars, everybody loses something. The question is whether what we're gaining is worth what we're losing, and right now, the American consumer seems to be bearing most of the cost. So, what has been the authorities' response to all of this? What is the administration actually doing about the fact that nearly half of Americans feel worse off? This is where it gets interesting. According to political insiders and Republican lawmakers, there's a growing recognition that something needs to change. Behind closed doors, members of the president's own party are telling him to tone down the aggressive international rhetoric, to stop threatening new tariffs every other week, to focus less on acquiring Greenland or expanding American territory, and more on the kitchen table issues that voters actually care about. The Commerce Secretary recently went on record saying he expects GDP growth to exceed 5%. That would be remarkable if it happens. But here's what you need to understand about GDP growth. Gross domestic product measures the total value of all goods and services produced in the economy. It's a macro number. It tells you how the overall economy is doing, but it doesn't tell you how you're doing. You could have 5% GDP growth while median incomes stay flat. You could have a booming stock market while regular people struggle to pay their bills. These macro indicators can look great, while micro realities, your reality, remains difficult. The administration's strategy appears to be betting on tax refunds to improve consumer sentiment. The thinking goes like this. When people start getting their tax refunds in the coming months, they'll have some extra cash in their pockets. They'll feel a little better about the economy. They'll start spending more. Consumer confidence will rise. And maybe, just maybe, people will start feeling like things are turning around. But is a one-time tax refund really going to solve the structural affordability crisis that's been building for years? Most economic analysts are skeptical. There's also been talk about focusing more on domestic issues as we head into the 2026 midterm elections. Political operatives recognize that voters are tuned out to foreign policy debates and international posturing. They want to hear about jobs, prices, housing, healthcare, the basics. So, expect to see a messaging shift in the coming months, more emphasis on what the administration is doing to help ordinary Americans, and less emphasis on grand geopolitical strategies. But here's what you need to do right now, because you can't just wait around for Washington to fix things. You need to take action to protect yourself and your family financially. Step 1, and this is crucial, you need to get real about your budget. I know that sounds basic, but most people don't actually track where every dollar goes. Sit down this week and write out every single expense. Your fixed costs like rent and car payments, your variable costs like groceries and gas, your discretionary spending like entertainment and dining out. You need to see the full picture before you can make changes. Step 2, identify what you can cut. And I'm not talking about giving up your morning coffee or canceling your streaming service, although those might be options too. I'm talking about real structural changes. Can you refinance your car loan at a lower rate? Can you shop around for cheaper car insurance? Can you reduce your grocery bill by meal planning and buying store brands instead of name brands? Every dollar you can save is a dollar that gives you more breathing room. Step 3. Build an emergency fund if you don't have one already. I know this seems impossible when you're already stretched thin, but even $20 a week adds up. Start somewhere. The goal is to have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up, so that if you lose your job or face an unexpected medical bill or your car breaks down, you're not immediately in crisis mode. This is your financial safety net, and in an uncertain economy, it's more important than ever. Step 4. If you're employed, now is the time to make yourself indispensable at work. Update your skills, volunteer for projects, document your achievements, because if the economy does slow down further and companies start laying people off, you want to be the last person they'd consider cutting, and simultaneously keep your resume updated and your network active because the no hire, no fire market could shift quickly. Step 5. Explore additional income streams. I'm not saying you need to get a second full-time job, but could you do some freelance work in your field? Could you sell items you no longer need? Could you turn a hobby into a small side business? In a K-shaped economy where traditional employment is uncertain, diversifying your income sources provides security. If these personal steps aren't enough, if you're still struggling despite doing everything right, there are escalation options you need to know about. Contact your congressional representatives and senators. Tell them your story. Tell them how the current economic policies are affecting you personally. Politicians pay attention to constituent feedback, especially as we get closer to elections. Your voice matters more than you think. Look into local assistance programs. Many communities have resources for people struggling with food costs, utility bills, rent assistance. There's no shame in using these programs. They exist precisely for situations like this. Check with your local social services office, community action agencies, and religious organizations. Help is available if you know where to look. Consider joining or supporting advocacy organizations that fight for economic justice, fair wages, and affordable housing. Collective action has power. When thousands of people organize around an issue, elected officials take notice. Whether it's tenant unions, worker coalitions, or consumer protection groups, find organizations aligned with your values and get involved. And here's something most people don't think about. There are serious oversight concerns that need to be addressed at the policy level. The disconnect between official economic pronouncements and public sentiment suggests that the metrics we're using to measure economic health might be broken. GDP growth and stock market performance tell us very little about whether ordinary people can afford to live. We need better measures of economic well-being that account for housing costs relative to income, healthcare affordability, food security, and actual purchasing power. There's also the question of accountability for economic policymaking. When tariff policies lead to higher consumer prices, who takes responsibility? When tax cuts disproportionately benefit the wealthy while working people struggle, who answers for that? We need more transparency in how economic decisions are made and more honest assessment of their impacts. The American people deserve economic policies that are crafted with their interests in mind, not just the interests of corporations and the wealthy. The Federal Reserve's role also deserves scrutiny. Their mandate is to maintain price stability and maximum employment, but their primary tool is interest rates, which is a blunt instrument. Higher interest rates might cool inflation, but they also make mortgages more expensive, car loans more expensive, business expansion more difficult. Are there better tools we could be using? Other countries have experimented with different approaches to managing inflation and economic growth. Maybe it's time we looked at what works elsewhere. So here's where we are. 1 year into this administration's second term, the economy presents a paradox. Official indicators suggest strength. Unemployment is relatively low. GDP is growing. Corporate earnings are solid. But the lived experience of millions of Americans tells a different story. A story of struggling to afford basics, of watching prices rise faster than wages, of feeling left behind by an economy that seems to work for everyone except them. This disconnect matters because an economy is ultimately about people. It's about whether families can thrive, whether young people can build futures, whether retirees can live with dignity. And by that human measure, we're failing far too many people. The road ahead is uncertain. Will the administration's bet on tax refunds and messaging changes be enough to shift public perception? Will the focus on domestic issues translate into actual policies that help ordinary Americans? Will the tariff strategy eventually pay off in ways that offset the current pain? Or will we continue down this path of a K-shaped economy where prosperity is reserved for those already at the top? These questions will define not just the next year, but potentially the next decade of American economic life. What I want you to take away from this, what I need you to understand, is that your economic struggles are real and they're valid. You're not imagining that things are harder. You're not failing because you can't afford what you used to afford. The system itself has changed in ways that benefit some people while making life harder for others. Recognizing that reality is the first step toward demanding change. And change is possible. Throughout American history, economic policies have shifted in response to public pressure. The New Deal happened because people demanded action during the Great Depression. Worker protections happened because people organized and fought for them. Consumer safety regulations happened because people demanded accountability. Change happens when enough people say enough is enough and demand better from their leaders. So stay informed, stay engaged, hold your elected officials accountable. Support policies that prioritize affordability and opportunity for everyone, not just the wealthy. Vote for candidates who understand your economic reality and have concrete plans to address it. And talk to your neighbors, your co-workers, your family members about these issues. The more people who understand what's really happening, the harder it becomes for politicians to ignore the reality on the ground. Here at US Economy Today, we're committed to cutting through the noise and bringing you the truth about what's happening to the American economy. Not the sanitized version, not the politically convenient version, but the version that reflects your actual experience. Because you deserve to know what's really going on. You deserve economic policies that work for you. And you deserve a future where hard work is rewarded with security and opportunity, not just survival. The booming economy the president describes might be real for some Americans, but for the 44% who feel worse off, for the families struggling with high prices, for the job seekers facing a frozen market, that boom feels very far away. Until economic prosperity reaches everyone, until affordability is restored, until opportunity is genuinely available to all Americans regardless of their starting point, we haven't truly succeeded as an economy or as a nation. That's the standard we should be holding our leaders to. That's the future we should be fighting for. And that's the story we'll keep telling until things change. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more honest economic analysis, and most importantly, don't lose hope. Together, we can demand and create an economy that works for everyone. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting for the future you deserve.